First off, if we could, I just want to give her another round of applause. That was just, it's just so amazing. It's so amazing. It's amazing too because that fits so perfectly with what I'd like to discuss today. You know, so much of it was the essence and expression of kindness. The essence and expression of kindness is the very essence of reframing. Reframing. So this is a conversation about reframing. And so first of all, you know, as we go into it, I need your help because I want to frame something in my own life. I want to tell you a brief story about my life. When I was in 5th grade, I was in a library. I was at the science fiction book club meeting. And I was looking around all the people around the table, and suddenly it occurred to me that every single one of these people was a dork. And in this moment, I realized something about myself. Well, that framing actually didn't really work that well for me at the time. Being a dork was not my goal at the time. You know, I managed to be a good athlete and still be a dork. But as I went on, I realized that, wait, this is actually a good thing. Dorks are wonderful. Dorks have things they're passionate about, things that they love to do. They are inspired. A lot of times they're much nicer to other people. So being a dork actually turned out to be a good thing for me. So in that vein, I want to tell you, and please, we have to keep this between you guys and me. Don't tell anybody this. I want to tell you that one of my big goals as a adult dork is to be a superhero. I want to be in something like the X-Men or the Avengers. Like, I know I'm serious about this. I want all this stuff. And you know, I want the uniform. Now I'm 53 years old, and so this uniform is not going to, I'm not going to look as good as the other people in the group. But it's okay, it's okay. But I want to tell you about my superpower. I want my superpower to be calm and slightly optimistic. That's what I want my superpower to be. So when I'm in this group and you have the one guy throwing cars and the lady shooting fire, I want to be sitting there and saying, hey, you know what? I think things are going to be okay. That's it. That's all I want. That's my framing. So I appreciate you guys being involved with that, but that's my framing. So again, this idea of reframing. Your frame is the house that you live in. That's why I did that meditation at the beginning. It's about your home. What is the house that you're living in? Okay? What is your frame? Your frame is that which you tell yourself on a regular basis and want to tell everybody else about. I was always, struck. I was always struck by people who hated whatever group, but always wanted to talk about that group. I mean, if I hate peanut butter, I don't eat it all the time. What I'm suggesting is that is a form of framing. What you tell yourself, you make real. Words are magical incantations. So I'm suggesting to you to create a home that works for you, to create a home that makes you feel at peace, that makes you feel calm. We want to remember that our framing is not necessarily based on reality. We can believe something, but there's a difference between perception and reality. So I'm asking you to frame something that makes you feel good, that makes you feel more peaceful, makes you feel more kind, makes you more patient. This is the framing I'm talking about. A framing is not a destination. Again, it's a direction. We talked about that in terms of stress reduction. Stress reduction is not a destination. It's a way of living. With my framing, if you and I are the last two people on this planet, I hope to be turning to you saying, hey, you know what? I think things are going to be okay. It's a framing that works for you throughout your entire life. Your history, the things that you went through in your life, of course they're important. But what is your framing of those things? Are you framing something that's making you powerful or something that's making you suffer? You have that choice. You have that choice. You can choose it by the size of your framing. As big as the events of your life were, by choosing the size of your framing, you can make them bigger or smaller. You know, if you have the most beautiful park in the world, if you change that framing and bring it down to a pile of dog poop, it's not going to be pretty. Change the size of your framing. Make yourself big. Make yourself magnificent, because that's who you are. Make yourself big. You know, when you change your framing, you find that you can calm down. It's really hard to go from negativity to being calm. Change your framing. When you change your framing, you'll tell a different story. You might tell the same stories, but it'll be from an entirely different light. Your framing is like your theme song. When you come into a room, is it this heavy, foreboding music, or is it something beautiful? Because that's what you deserve. You deserve a beautiful story. Slow things down. When you slow things down, you are able to change your framing. You become, instead of a victim, you become the master of your own life. And not only that, you begin to help other people. So it is true that, you know, when I was growing up, I had some major challenges. Of course, we all do. I want to tell you briefly about a story of someone who helped me change my framing. I grew up in an Irish community in the 70s, and it was a very, very hostile circumstance. But there was one woman there who had a profound impact on my life. She was an Irish woman. She had 8 kids, and her husband had left her for the babysitter. So I was in a situation in which people were often being extremely hostile, and these 2 boys came up to me one day. I thought that they were going to try to beat me up. I was in 3rd grade. They were in 8th grade. Okay, so it turned out that these guys were befriending me. It turned out that they were befriending me because the mother had sent them out to me. And for the next 5 years of my life, this place was a place of safety. It was really the only place of safety I knew at that time. It exists all the way now to me today. She's a hero of mine. She helped. She reframed things for me. Now, I could focus on the other things, but I choose to focus on the kindness of this person. Kindness is all important. So what is your framing? And why is your framing so important to you? Why is your story so important to you, the way that you tell it? Maybe you can turn it to a slightly different direction and create a whole new meaning. What is your framing? Reframe. You frame every moment of your life. You frame every moment of your life. You frame when you wake up in the morning and you look at the news. What's the news you're looking for? Reframe. It's possible. It's possible to change the entire world. Our framing is really about perception. It actually isn't about reality. You know, there's this idea that you can tell Christians by their works. So what are your works? That is the element of the story that you are telling. So this is the way that we can change the world. We can change the world by changing our own expression of the world. We can change the world by choosing to live in a world that's kind, that's patient. We can change the world by changing the stories that we tell ourselves about our past. Maybe the things that you like about yourself actually came out of that pain. We can change the world by becoming more patient. You know, it is true that I worked for so many years in mental health, and I was fascinated by the stories that were told. One of the things I was fascinated by were people who hoarded. They lived in these homes that they packed full of stuff. There was no space. That is a type of framing. So what I'm suggesting to you is that we change our own place. We get rid of all the junk in our house. We create room. We get rid of all the things that are holding us stuck to our past. We create another story in which our story is triumphant. And we want to recognize that this gives us power until the very, very end of our life. Do you really want to be repeating your story to yourself right at the point that you leave this world? We can actually frame this story in a way that makes us feel good about the last 5 minutes of our life. We are so unbelievably powerful. We have to intend it. We have to give up that framing that makes us feel powerful, but actually makes us weak. You know, like the bully on the playground? The bully on the playground is not strong. And in fact, it's a bubble that pops. So we want to have that depth of strength that comes on us as a transformation when things begin to change, and all of a sudden, we don't know when it happened, we know that it happened. We don't know when our story went from being a tragedy to be something beautiful. We remember that we did it through things like gratitude. Be grateful for your story. You're wonderful. We do it by things like humor. I was thinking about doing this conversation this morning, and I was getting ready this morning. I took a shower, and I stepped out of the shower, and I looked in the mirror. And I suddenly realized that my 18-year-old self would not be pleased. But fortunately, I had to reframe it. And I laughed. We can laugh. We can laugh about our story. We can have kindness for ourselves and others. And we can remember that every single person in your world is actually part of you. One bright morning when my life is over, I will fly back home. One bright morning when my life is over, I will fly back home. This is a reframing. And we can reframe our lives. Thank you.